Hey everyone, welcome back to Electrotech 5. Have you ever thought or asked how huge creations were transferred across locations before? Well, get ready to absorb information as we discuss the top 15 amazing large transportation operations. Number 15. The Troll A Platform. The Troll A Platform is the largest thing ever moved by man from off the coast of Norway. It doesn't always stay in its current location, and it wasn't built in the middle of the ocean, so it had to be moved from the Norwegian coast at Vats to the Troll Field. The Troll Field is in the northern part of the North Sea, about 65 kilometers west of Kolsnes near Bergen. Though it doesn't sound that far, the fact that the platform is at a staggering 1,548 feet tall and weighs about 1.2 million tons. Who would have thought that it can be moved? There were 10 tugboats to pull this platform through the water at a painfully slow speed that took them 7 days and 6 hours. Everything has been televised so everyone would be a witness to what they have been through, just to move the platform and make it secure in the seabed. It has been acknowledged in the Guinness Book of World Records in 1996 as the biggest oil rig. Number 14. The Space Shuttle Endeavour. Did you know that the 1981 Space Shuttle was officially called the Space Transportation System, or the STS? It became the world's first reusable spacecraft to carry humans into orbit. Over the 30-year course of the Space Shuttle program, the shuttles and their crews assembled parts of the International Space Station, deployed and serviced the Hubble Space Telescope and the Chandra X-ray Observatory, repaired and relaunched satellites, sent probes to Venus and Jupiter, and more. The Space Shuttle was made up of several separate components. What people usually call the shuttle is the orbiter, the part of the shuttle that held the crew and the cargo, officially called the payloads. The main engines are part of the orbiter. In addition to the orbiter, each shuttle stack included 2 solid rocket boosters and an external tank. All of the components were usable except for the external tank, which by design burned up in the atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean following each launch. Endeavour was built to replace Space Shuttle Challenger. Endeavour was the final orbiter to join the shuttle fleet. Many newer features were added to Endeavour during construction, such as updated steering mechanisms, upgraded plumbing and electrical connections to allow for longer missions, and a drag chute that reduced wear and tear on the shuttle's brakes and tires. Many of the innovations that were developed for Endeavour were added later to the shuttles in the fleet. It was first launched on the 7th of May of 1992 for mission STS-49. The crew's primary goal during that mission was to repair and release a communication satellite, the Intelsat 6, back into orbit. Though the capture of the satellite did not go as smoothly as planned, the crew aboard still was able to complete the mission through a series of 4 spacewalks, the most ever completed on a shuttle mission up to that time. That was the longest spacewalk ever recorded, and the second longest was over 8 hours. That first mission set a precedent for Endeavour, whose string of 25 missions was marked with ingenuity and success. Number 13. The Evaporator for the Saudi Arabian Desalinization Unit. The simplest meaning of desalinization is a process of separating salt from water. Saudi Arabia has some of the biggest desalinization plants on the planet, but for this to work, an evaporator is needed. The evaporator is key, but who would think that these huge machines are so difficult to transport? Transport Logistics was in charge of moving the evaporator from Vietnam to Saudi Arabia. Imagine the evaporator unit can produce up to 91,000 tons of potable water per day, a volume enough for consumption by 300,000 people, making it the largest unit capacity in the world. The evaporator is also the world's largest in size, as it measures 123 meters long, 33.7 meters wide, and weighs 4,150 tons. Transporting the evaporator inland alone requires 30 tractor trailers with a combined total of 627 wheels. No wonder it's known as the largest evaporator, and it can desalinize tons of potable water per day that's enough for 300,000 people. Number 12. The Muon G-2. Is it magnetic? Like the Electron, the muon has a magnetic field that makes it act like a tiny bar magnet. As muons travel, they generate various particles that briefly pop in and out of existence. These ephemeral particles slightly increase the muon's magnetism, known as its magnetic moment. This helps scientists measure the internal magnetic workings of a muon particle. This magnet was built at Brookhaven National Lab that's in Long Island that needs to be transported to Chicago. This is a 50 feet long magnet that needs to travel in a 900 miles distance. Who could have thought that it will take years of planning on how to move this magnet, considering if its magnitude presented a particularly unique set of problems. This magnet needs to be transported without breaking it up that would ruin the uniformity of the magnetic field that's needed to do its job. The magnet costs too much, $30 million to be exact. This ring couldn't be twisted more than 3 millimeters. Luckily, the magnet was transferred successfully to the Fermi Lab, where it sits today doing its important muon measuring. Number 11. The Prelude FLNG. Prelude is a floating liquefied natural gas platform, so it can be moved into any location. Prelude FLNG is one of the largest structures in the world, and given its size, moving this thing is not easy unlike some other oil rigs. In 2013 in South Korea, a double-hulled vessel oil rig was built. Its length is about 1,600 feet and its weight exceeds 600,000 tons. That it requires more than 260,000 tons of steel to build. It costs more than $13 billion and built to be used in the Prelude and Concerto gas fields in the Browse LNG basin, which is just over 100 miles off the coast of Australia. The platform was launched in December of 2013 and made its maiden voyage on July 25 of 2017. The platform had to travel from the place where it was constructed in South Korea to its site in the waters near Australia. This voyage was 3,600 miles, and although it was slow going for this massive platform, the transport operation was a success. Number 10. Nuclear reactors. Nuclear reactors are the heart of a nuclear power plant that contains and controls nuclear chain reactions that produce heat through a physical process called fission and something you wouldn't want to mess up with. The nuclear reactor that was transported from Southern California to Utah was already decommissioned. Even so, the transportation process was still so complex due to its size and weight. The reactor is weighed at 1.5 million pounds and 16.5 feet in diameter. No matter how challenging the transportation was, the reactor was still successfully transferred from Southern California Edison Sentinel Free Nuclear Generation Station to the Energy Solutions Nuclear Waste Facility in Clive, Utah. It was custom-made a 122-foot-long trailer, which had to be assembled on-site in North Las Vegas. The load was transported by 6 heavy-duty Class 8 trucks with 4 tractors pushing and 2 pulling to create a train of sorts. Combined, they offered up to 4,000 horsepower to transport this thing, and it traveled at a speed of about 5 miles an hour. It took 7 days for the reactor to travel the 450 miles along various highways through Nevada. It caused a few road closures, and it was quite the spectacle as it meandered its way across the desert state. Number 9. The Hotel Montgomery. Hotel Montgomery has a ballroom, 2 dining rooms, and 142 guest suites. This hotel was built in 1911. Just like any other hotels, Hotel Montgomery fell into disrepair that led to a decision to just build a new fancy hotel on the exact same site. The most logical thing to do in that hotel was to tear it apart. But obviously, that did not happen since San Jose officials decided to just move the hotel due to its historical significance. Crazy but sentimental. The hotel weighs about 4,800 tons. Who would say it was easy to be jacked? Well, specially designed cars were slid beneath it. From there, the entire hotel was moved intact 186 feet to its new location. The transportation costed about $8.5 million. It was a short transport, but the cost was insanely and awfully expensive. But apparently less than the cost of building a new hotel, so it was a budget-friendly decision. Number 8. Nuclear waste. While some transport issues are due to its sizes and weight, nuclear transport is different. It needs to be handled very carefully because it's dangerous since nuclear waste contains radioactive particles and materials that if released is going to cause a lot of problems. When I say problems, it's health problems from radiation sickness to cancer to cardiovascular diseases. Nuclear waste is transported to a disposal facility using a special container called casks. Do you know that nuclear waste takes 30 years to decay? That being said, it is put inside the cask that's made of high-strength steel and heavily shielded because nuclear waste is something anyone wouldn't like to spill. What's cool about this cask is, it's made to withstand a wide range of potentially dangerous environmental conditions. Number 7. HOEGH Target. Have you ever wondered how foreign supercars are transported across continents? Well, these cars are transported by ships. HOEGH Target is owned by Norwegian Ho Autoliners. It's 1,999 meters long, has a capacity of 8,500 CEU, and has 14 cargo decks. All in all, 71,400 square meters of deck space, which is the equivalent of 10 football pitches. Hoe Target is the biggest car and truck carrier in the world. It is called a Pure Car and Truck Carrier, or a PCTC. Number 6. The Levitated Mass by Michael Heiser. To the eyes of many who does not know about art, you will see it as a big rock. Mostly says it's engineering, crazy expensive $10 million engineering, in a city and state being squashed by a massive rock of death. They even found a name for it, a Leviathan Mess, a rocky horror. But this is an iconic piece of art that is currently displayed at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. This started when Heiser combined a 120-ton rock in the Sierras above Reno, Nevada. In 2007, Heiser was working at the then Pirate Hub's quarry in the nearby Riverside County when a 340-ton megalith came off the quarry wall during a detonation. The large size and impressive scale of the boulder were perfect criteria to realize levitated mass. It was soon developed between Heiser and LECMA director Michael Galvan that this work could be constructed at LACMA. Due to its massive size, the boulder required a complex and thoroughly reviewed transportation process from its quarry to the museum. A distance of approximately 105 miles. Its transportation took place over the course of roughly 11 nights, which began on February 28, 2012. The transporter carrying the boulder traveled on a specially designed route, covering 4 counties: Riverside, San Bernardino, Orange, and Los Angeles, and 22 cities, with movement happening only at night. At 340 tons, the boulder was one of the largest megaliths moved since ancient times. Taken whole, Levitated Mass speaks to the expanse of art history, from ancient traditions of creating artworks from megalithic rocks to modern forms of abstract geometries and cutting-edge feats of engineering, as well as the modern philosophies underlying Heiser's work of using negative space and volume as physical or measurable entities in major proportions in his sculptures and paintings. Number 5. The Titanic. Who doesn't know about the Titanic? I bet none. Even kids today knows the story behind the Titanic. Well, it will not be named a famous ship if it's not famous, right? While we are continuously fascinated about its tragic story, did it ever come to our mind where the ship was built and how is this ship transported to the sea? It has a pretty amazing transportation operation story too. Before the Titanic hit the Atlantic waters in 1912 for her inaugural and only crossing, she had to be launched into the water. The launch took place at the Belfast shipyard, and given the fact she weighed 24,360 tons at the time of her launch, moving her to the water took a lot of planning. The historic event happened on May 31st, 1911 to a lot of fanfare. First, the hydraulic launching triggers that were holding her were released. From there, she slid down the 772-foot-long slipway and then entered the water at a speed of roughly 14 miles an hour. Once she hit the water, 80 tons of drag weights attached to 6 massive anchors did their work and brought the ship to a standstill. From there, 5 tugboats hauled her to the water where she was outfitted with her final furnishings. The most amazing part of the transport operation was when they lubricated the slipway with soap for it to slide down. Number 4. The James Webb Telescope. The JWST, or the James Webb Telescope, is worth a staggering $10 billion. The most complex and the most expensive space observatory ever built. It's used to take a look into deep space in the hopes that it can shed some light about the origin of the cosmos. The transport of this telescope had to be meticulously planned with no room for any errors. It needed to be transported to French Guiana, its launching site. A long list of possible obstacles during the transport was made because things like safe transportation, pulling permits, avoiding obstruction, clearing the transportation path, and the physical logistics of transporting was included. This telescope was assembled in Greenbelt, Maryland at the Goddard Space Flight Center in 2013. From there, it was shipped to NASA's Jones Space Center in Houston for testing. The famous telescope was transported multiple times to multiple locations until the vessel brought the telescope through the Panama Canal and then by sea to its final destination. The telescope launched on December 25, 2021, and it's now millions of miles away from the Earth. Number 3. The Bullwinkle. The Bullwinkle platform is a self-contained drilling and production platform recently installed in the Gulf of Mexico, approximately 160 miles southwest of New Orleans, Louisiana. The platform is supported by 28 84-inch diameter skirt piles. The decks are designed to support 2 full-size drilling rigs. 60 well slots are provided, but only 50 conductors were initially installed. Permanent production facilities will be installed after the drilling program has been completed and the rigs are removed. It is basically a conventional template type structure with horizontal jacket dimensions of 135 by 158 feet at the top, plus a 15-foot elevation, and 400 by 480 feet at the mudline. The Bullwinkle jacket was transported to the installation site on Urima's launch barge H-851. Positioning lines from 4 tugs and 2 anchor lines from the crane vessel Odin were connected to the jacket prior to launch, but it was not sufficient for the jacket to completely self-upend. Personnel boarded the top of the jacket to complete the ballasting operations using a pre-installed control panel. The jacket was positioned on bottom by additional flooding without crane assistance. The piles were all fabricated to full length and transported to the field on a single cargo barge. Number 2. Big animals. What usually comes to your mind when you hear big animals? Big animals such as giraffes, whales, and other majestic mammals are transported using a custom-built container. Animals have their own unique challenges when it comes to transportation since they are living, breathing creatures. In 2013, a young giraffe named Nakuru was transported from New Zealand over to Melbourne, Australia by way of sea on a cargo ship. That same year, another giraffe named Tonda was transported to the Chessington Zoo in England. Tonda had a special trailer built from scratch complete with an adjustable roof so he could take in some fresh air along the way. While giraffes and other animals like lions are difficult to move, some mammals are even tougher. Whales, for example, are extremely difficult to transport. There are amazingly 2 ways to move marine life. The first is wet transit. Wet transit involves the keeping of the marine life in a large tank of water during the move. This is ideal but isn't always possible, so the other way to move marine life is dry transit. During dry transits, the animal is put in a padded sling and human assistance is needed to keep the animal cool and wet during the transit. Keiko, the killer whale from the popular feature film Free Willy, is probably the most famous whale ever moved. He was transported several times. And number 1. The Abu Simbel Temple. Abu Simbel was a temple built by Ramses II in ancient Nubia, where he wished to demonstrate his power and his divine nature. 4 colossal statues of him, which measured in 65 feet or 20 meters, sit in pairs flanking the entrance. The head and torso of the statue to the left of the entrance fell during ancient times, probably the results of an earthquake. This temple faces the east and the Riho Rakti. One manifestation of the sun god is shown inside the niche directly above the entrance. The alignment of the temple is such that twice a year, the sun's rays reach into the innermost sanctuary to illuminate the seated statues of Ta, Amun-Re, Ramses II, and Re-Horakhti. The temple was cut out of sandstone cliffs above the Nile River in an area near the Second Cataract. When the High Dam was being constructed in the early 1960s, international cooperation assembled funds and technical expertise to move this temple to higher ground so that it would not be inundated by the waters of Lake Nasser. With UNESCO deciding to move the temple to a safer location, this was no easy task. The temple was huge, weighing around 31,000 tons. There's no way they could move the whole thing in one piece. They could only move it in pieces. But the temple with its statues and art was extremely delicate and they didn't want to damage any part of the temple. So, the decision was made to cut it up to small pieces, move it bit by bit, and put them back together. It was cut to 1,036 blocks. The blocks were each around 3 tons and were numbered to make sure it was put back together properly. Each block was carefully transported to the temple's new location 700 feet away at a higher elevation. This is Electrotech 5, and that's it for today. I hope you learned a lot and got amazed on how these things were transported. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification. See you again in our next video.